So, it's been about 2 weeks since the launch of Elementary OS 6 Odin. And when that did release, a whole lot of different YouTubers uploaded videos on it, and I saw that, so I decided that I was actually going to hold off for a little bit and actually use Elementary OS 6 on my laptop for about 2 weeks or so I could actually give you guys a full review of my personal experience. Since after all those videos, you guys probably know what the new features are. The question is, how does somebody actually like running it every single day? Now, on my main production machine, I'm still running Arch, but this right here, this is my ThinkPad T450, and I use it just about every day for things like graphic design work. I make a lot of my thumbnails on this laptop. I use it to run my Discord server, which you can join in the link in the description if you're interested. I run FileZilla, basic web browsing stuff, on this laptop. So now that it's been about 2 weeks of me using Elementary OS, what's my general review of it? Overall, it's a fairly solid operating system, but there's just some things that I don't really like too much about it. And a lot of this does come to personal opinion, but you can either agree or disagree with those opinions. I'm about to run through just about everything. Alright, so we are on the system here, and we're going to start off by talking about some of the things that I actually did like about it. We're going to start off on a positive note. So, overall, this operating system is absolutely beautiful. We can really tell the time and the care that the Elementary OS team put into designing this. Went into rewriting the design so it can work with the dark theme and all that, because really comparing the design from 5 to 6, there's not huge significant differences, just minor improvements here and there. And one of the improvements is the dark theme. So what we're going to do real quick is go ahead and go into our settings, go under personal and desktop, and here is where you get access to all your customization settings. The thing about Elementary OS, it is not very customizable at all. The main point of this system, well, not the main point, but one of the primary points of this system is out of the box, they want it to be configured perfectly. They don't want you to have to go ahead and do a bunch of extra things to get the look that you're going for. If you like Pantheon, you like this look, it's already perfect. But even with that, they gave us enough options that we can kind of customize it and make it our own. We have wallpapers here, tons of beautiful wallpapers to go ahead and select from. I usually stick with something that's more mountainy. That's just because that's what I like it to look like. If we go under appearance here, this is where you can find their reworked dark theme. Overall, it integrates better with third-party applications. With their own applications, it just looks good. So if I go ahead and switch it over to that dark theme, you can see it obviously darkens everything up. The fonts look good, the colors look good. Everything just is nice looking. And really when it comes to theming, I'm perfectly fine with this. You see I already went ahead, I had purple selected. Purple's one of my favorite colors. It just looks good on top of the dark theme. Additionally, you can set to sunrise, so you can set times for it to switch in between the light and dark themes. And we have text size here, so this is a fairly low resolution display, but if I wanted the text to even be smaller, you could do that. You could go large if you're having problems seeing things, which if I was on a larger screen real estate, I'd probably go with that large text. And we have default, and then there's not fractional scaling, but you could go ×2, ×3 when it comes to the actual scaling through the display settings. And one thing I think is kind of cool right here, the dyslexia friendly text. I personally don't use it, but I do think it's cool that they went ahead and added a feature like that to make it easier to read for some people. Over here, the dock to panel, this is something I personally wish had more settings, but here to actually change this panel, you could have your icon size, you could hide when, so you could change when it's actually hidden. We have pressure reveal, and then you can enable or disable the panel transparency up here. And when I say it's not very customizable, like for this top panel up here, like I right click, nothing happens. When it comes to it not being very customizable, this panel transparency for this top bar is literally the only customization option that you have available to you. Additionally, there's some multitasking stuff, so you could change that over there. But overall, that's one of the things that I really do like is the actual appearance of it. And some of the new things I like is how they manage notifications over here. You could see I was playing around a little bit. I have a 0AD installed. I did a couple things in FileZilla, and I have updates available on my system. And I could go ahead and clear all like this, clear all, And then right here, you can see 3 hours ago, I side loaded Spotify. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the App Center here in a little bit. But sticking with some of the things I actually like about the system, some of their applications are really nice. One of those applications right here is Code. This is their default coding application. It's very similar to something like Kate in KDE, where it gives you the syntax for whatever type of document you're working in. You see this is my .bashrc file is the last thing I have open in here. Again, not too many options to configure this actual application, but just enough. We have the general theming, so I'm pretty sure right here this is the default theming, but I prefer this dark. There's some preferences in this application. For general saving tabs, you have interface and some extensions that you can go ahead and play around with. I'm going to close that out, but out of the applications, this is definitely a highlight for me when it comes to the overall functionality and how it is designed. Over here on the sidebar, you have different projects, so you can manage multiple files at once. Overall, their code application is awesome. Another thing I really like is their terminal application. It's very simple. It works perfectly. I love the tab interface. I'm going to bring up the first con real quick. This isn't that big of a deal, but it just kind of was off-putting to me. You could see my thing right here is Brandon at ThinkPad T450, etc., etc. Usually when you go ahead and install a Linux distribution, it asks you what you want to name your computer. And generally, I just name the computer the name of the Linux distribution, so it will say like Brandon at Elementary OS. While installing Elementary, it didn't give that option, so it just went with the default computer name thing, which I'm not really a fan of, but again, that's me kind of stretching to find a negative. Now, one other thing I liked was just some of the settings options that we have in here. Primarily under applications. Here, it is really easy to go ahead and change your default applications. So one thing I need to do actually is switch this to MPV because their video player doesn't work very well. I'm going to talk about that in a sec too. You can add startup applications, and then they have very nice permissions control. So you can select what applications can do what and access what externally. So it just gives you more control over what is going on in your system. Another thing that's good that I've actually started using recently, I haven't used this too much until I started using Elementary OS, and that is the gesture control. So 3-finger swipe up will take us to our open workspaces. We can swipe them down to go back, or we can use 3 fingers and swipe left and right to go to our different workspaces. Personally, I don't really use other workspaces, but I've actually been using them a lot more since I started using these touch gestures. And from there, I'm going to start talking about some of the things I really did not like about Elementary OS. Some of these are just me being nitpicky, but some of these I think are detrimental to the operating system when it comes to adoption, things like that. And the first thing I'm going to do is open up the App Center because this has both pros and cons. So the big pro is it is absolutely beautiful. You can see the categories look nice. This is beautiful. It is a Pop! OS uses this as a fork for their Pop! Shop, but the main problem with this, and the main problem is actually kind of a newer feature, and that was that side loading thing. You can see right here under non-curated apps, these were all added after the fact. Everything above here is the only thing that was in this actual App Store or App Center before I went ahead and installed the Flatpak application. So literally under Internet, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 applications, and that's it. If you go under something like games, there was absolutely nothing in there. So for somebody who doesn't know that you need to do that, you think that there's absolutely no applications available except for their couple that are already in here by default. And me, for the first couple days I was using this, I thought that was the case. I didn't know that you needed to go to the FlatHub repo, install an application through there, or the FlatHub repo website, install an application through there to get the entire FlatHub repo on here. There's no quick settings or anything that you could go to just to enable that. You gotta actually go to a web browser and do that. For me, I didn't know that for a couple days, so I realized Firefox wasn't in the store, so I did a sudo apt install Firefox, and then I installed a Discord down here through a snap package, just because I just thought the repositories in this were weak, when in reality I just needed to add that FlatHub repo. And so for somebody who's like completely new to this, it's just doesn't look good. Those FlatHub repos is just something that should kind of be added out of the box. And even if they did add it out of the box, they still have a little warning message. If I go under here, you could see under audio, literally the only things in here were music and tuner. And then if you go ahead and add those repos, we have Adobe, Ardor, a bunch of good things. If I go ahead and add Audacity, for example, it's going to give me this warning. Would you like to install this non-curated application? Gives you a couple warnings. You go ahead and install anyway, and it installs. So even if they included the FlatHub repo out of the gate, they're still going to have that little warning message, which may make people think twice before installing certain applications. But it's really not a bad thing to give all this app support and this huge list of applications from install, basically. So the default repositories in their App Center is definitely my biggest complaint when it comes to Elementary OS. And from here, I'm going to be kind of nitpicky with some things. And one of them is the video player doesn't really work very well. This is a MKV file recorded with OBS. It's a format that works with everything. If I go ahead double click, oh, it's actually going to work because I switched that default. But if I go ahead right click, open with, and I open it with their native videos application, it just holds on a black screen. And I tried this with MP4s, AVIs, MOVs. There were a couple things I got to play, but for some reason that doesn't work very good. I might need to go and install like the Ubuntu Restricted Extras codecs. That might be the solution to my issue, but it just worked with MPV, so I just installed that. And during the installation or the setup process, there were no options to install those third-party codecs or anything like that. Additionally, you see I have a couple links here. One thing they changed was if you go ahead and like click on a folder, it's going to take you into that folder directly. And to actually open up a file, you're going to want to go ahead and double click on it. Their Photos application is pretty nice. Some of the icons aren't my favorite. It's kind of goes with the naming elementary. It's kind of elementary-ish. But as I was saying, like some of the controls isn't that good. So like, let's say I wanted to drag this picture into my musics folder. You can see I really got to get it perfect to drag it on in there. Otherwise, it's going to try linking this into my bookmarks. So this is pretty hard to do with a trackpad. So I got to like perfectly get it above like that. So, and then it's in there. And if I do something like drag and accidentally let go of it, it creates a link to that full picture in the same directory. So it's just some little navigation and controls within their file explorer that aren't really my favorite. Another thing down here, if I try to connect to a server, I'm going to fill this out real quick. Sometimes this doesn't work, but it might work. So let's hit connect. Yeah, you can see it's not wanting to connect for me. And I can try changing this. So let's say if I go to a directory that I know is in there, I try to connect, it's not going to work. Let's take off the SFTP, connect, it's not going to work. So that would be nice if it actually worked, but for me it's not working. That just might be my install, but I'm not sure what's going on there. Now another thing that kind of sucks is I really wanted to use their mail application because it looks like a beautiful application, but I couldn't because I usually manage my school email on here. So it uses a Microsoft account, so you have to log in that way. And if I go to online accounts, it really only supports just a good old-fashioned IMAP, and that's it. So if I could do that, you could add stuff this way, but it doesn't support like easy Google integration, easy Microsoft integration. It's just old school IMAP, and that's all you really get. So I wasn't able to log into my school email through this, and I manage my Tech Hut email through Nextcloud, so I wasn't going to install it anyways, so I really can't enjoy that application to its potential. And some of the other applications look pretty good, such as the calendar. Their tasks application is fairly new and it looks really good. But I really didn't use all that because I manage a lot of that through Nextcloud as well. So I didn't really use too many of the native applications, but for the ones I did, the code was really good, the terminal's nice. The store, when it comes to the actual UI elements and everything, is beautiful. It just lacks some functionality and some preference options that I can't really get over. Now, before I end here, I am going to end on a little bit of a positive note, something I noticed recently that I've been plugging microphones and stuff into this laptop to record this video. And that is if I go over here, you have some pretty good controls of your audio inputs and outputs, so that's really nice. A lot of really good distributions don't even have that, so that is really nice. So ultimately, my impressions of this is nice. If you're somebody who's already used to Pantheon, who's already in the Elementary OS ecosystem, this is a fantastic upgrade. But what I'm getting at is somebody who's coming from something like KDE Plasma or GNOME, going to this, you're going to have a little bit of learning to do when it comes to actually working with the system, how some of the navigation controls work. It's not going to be a super fluid change, especially with the limited customization options. You're not going to be able to do what I end up doing all the time, and that's kind of matching whatever desktop environment you're in to the workflow you're used to. And for somebody who's switching over from Windows to Linux, this used to be one of the ones that I would recommend all the time. At this point, I really do think there are some better options, such as Zorin for kind of a GNOME base, Farron OS for like a KDE Plasma base, or even something as traditional as like Linux Mint when it comes to switching over from Windows to Linux. With all of that said, I would like to thank our YouTube members and Patreon supporters. Mitchell Valentino, thank you for being an executive level supporter. Additionally, we have Timo, Anthony, Phil Mack, and Kyle. You guys are awesome, some of the top tier Patreon or YouTube members. If you're interested, there's a link down in the description for the Patreon. And if you want to become a YouTube member, you get some extra things like badges, emojis, things like that. And with all of that said, there will be download links in the description to all the new changes for Elementary OS 6, as well as a download link if you'd like to try this out, either on hardware or a virtual machine. One thing I do know, if you're trying this out on a virtual machine, it's kind of a pain because of the default resolution. You gotta like hit enter and tab to kind of figure out the buttons or to try to get through the installation navigation. Yeah, subscribe, ring that bell so you do not miss any future uploads, and goodbye.